Welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Mad, and today I'm going to be giving you book recommendations based off of specific things, specific tropes I have in my head. I may have made some of them up, but they make sense to me. And we're totally doing this because it's a part of my content plan and not because I didn't finish all of the books that I wanted to for a vlog that I'm currently editing. First trope we're going to talk about is sapphic horror, where she may or may not be the monster. The first book is Feast While You Can by Michaela Clements and Anjuli Datta, and they're actually wives, which I think is so cute that they wrote a sapphic book together. This is about a woman who loves the town that she grew up in. She's basically a townie, and then her brother's ex comes back to town who she is totally in love with. And there's also this monster that haunts this town. No one's ever actually seen it, but they know that it's there, and it's in this pit. And it basically possesses you, takes control of your life. And obviously our main girl experiences that while also trying to navigate this really weird relationship with her brother's ex and trying to kind of revive and save her town. It is messy. It's very like folklore and atmospheric. I got to read it as an art class year and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. The next book is The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. This doesn't come out until May, but I did give it 5 stars. I love this and I'm not going to stop talking about it until it comes out. This is about a castle that's been under siege. They're kind of going through an apocalypse type of situation, but only in the castle, and for some reason they cannot leave. They are starting to run out of food, obviously, and their water had become tainted. They were dealing with that, and luckily this nun, who has kind of lost her faith and also gone off the deep end a little bit, fixed it for them through magic and rat poop, but mostly magic. And there's also a nun who is very grumpy and kind of into this nun, and then there is a third girl who used to be royalty but now is a servant in this castle to get revenge on the knight for something that she's done, but also needs the nun's help. And it's kind of this weird, messy throuple. And don't mistake me, this is not a romance. There's not really a whole lot of like romantic things going on. It's a romance in the same way Gideon the Ninth is a romance. And it's kind of just this medieval horror, and there's cannibalism and rot horror. It's so good and I love it so much. The last book that I want to talk about in this kind of weird sapphic category is Knock Knock Open Wide by Neil Sharpson. This is dual timeline. One, we follow a woman who has just gotten pregnant by this man that has proposed to her. They're in their teens or 20s, they're young, and she gets kidnapped by something that is very clearly supernatural. They have made a deal with the devil. And in the modern timeline, the early 2000s, late 90s, there are 2 girls who are totally into each other going to college. And one of them is the daughter of the woman in the first timeline. And they connect both through the drama department and because they both watch a kids show. This kids show is very creepy. There is a box and the episodes are very repetitive, but one thing that is kind of notable is that you don't want the show mascot to come out of the box. Don't make him mad. It would be bad if he came out of the box. Like, why would you want the kids to be afraid of the kids show mascot? That is so creepy. This is set in the Irish countryside. It's folklore. It's very sapphic, and I love it. I also gave this one 5 stars. I'm also going to be bouncing back and forth between more horror recommendations and then fantasy recommendations because those are my main 2 genres. I was always under the impression that I enjoyed a school setting in a fantasy book, but recently there's been this kind of influx of like naturalist fantasy or dark academia fantasy where they are super into whatever they are studying. They are very devoted to school, and I have found that to be kind of boring. So I was trying to reconcile this, and I realized what I liked was the school setting, but the main character could not give less of a shit about actually doing school. They're there for another reason. They have an ulterior motive, and that's kind of what I enjoy. My first example of this is The Will of the Many by James Islington. This is about a boy who used to be royalty but now is an orphan because this government has risen up, and it's basically a pyramid scheme but for power. And he gets adopted at 17, and he's like, what is up with this? He's adopted so that he can be a spy at this school, so that he can figure out what happened to his guardian's brother. And he also just kind of has to survive at this school because it's a survival of the fittest. Kids die in this school type of situation. And this was my favorite book from 2024. I loved it. One that I finished way more recently is Immortal Dark by Tigis Girma. This is an all-black cast, dark academia and vampires, but our main girl is only there to figure out what happened to her sister. She believes that a vampire has taken her sister and she needs to figure out why. And also that the house that she is living in with a vampire, that's the one that took her sister. There is a little bit of the schooling in this, but it doesn't really matter. It's more just world building, and I like that about it. Also, the main romantic relationship in this is very Spike and Buffy coded, and I'm super about that. And then take this recommendation with a grain of salt. I don't think that this book series is good. I have never said that it was well written. I have only said that I had a good time reading it, and that's Zodiac Academy. I think that this is like reality trash TV. It is candy for your brain, and I loved it. It's about two twins, and they are in the human world very down on their luck, just trying to survive, and then someone pops in and tells them, hey, you have this huge inheritance, you're actually royalty, but you have to go to this school for the next 4 years. And they're like, I guess, we're in it for the money. And it's a world where you have both a magical power and like an alternate body, like either a vampire or werewolf, things like that. And it goes off the rails from there. It's spicy and it's very silly, but yeah, I had a good time with it. Do I think that it needed to be 9 books? Probably not. But did I read all of them? Yes, I did. Quick 180 for tone. We're going to talk about grief horror now. A big one that I want to talk about is Our Wives Under the Sea. This book is kind of divisive in whether people love it or hate it. I love it. I loved the story. It was super slow and devastating. It's about a woman whose wife comes back from this deep sea exploration, and she comes back wrong. She kind of goes through this transformation, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. If you don't like a slow horror, you're probably not going to like this, but if you're willing to take the time to be absolutely emotionally crushed, then it would be for you, for sure. The next is The Har by David Sodergren. This is about an older woman who has lost her husband to time, who is in the process of losing her house to developers, and who is losing her friends and neighbors around her to those developers. And one night she picks up the Har. It's a monster, and he kind of embodies her husband, and she finds this new relationship, this new lease on life with him. And don't get me wrong, this is absolutely a horror book. It is disgusting. There are a lot of like kills and body horror in it, but it also made me cry so hard. I love this book so much. It may have been my favorite horror from last year. Next we have Monstrillo by Gerardo Serrano Cordova, and let me tell you, we are in our queer cannibalism as a metaphor renaissance. This book was so good. This was about a young couple who lost their son very early and unexpectedly, and the mom takes a piece of her dead son's lung and grows Monstrillo, and they kind of substitute him as their son, and just this whole grief journey that they go on. And then we see them again a lot later, and he's a monster, he's not human, and they're just trying to force him into a box that he is not fitting in, and they have to decide whether to continue trying forcing him to fit in this box or let him be who he is. And it's just so heartbreaking and so good. There's a lot of abrupt jumps, but I didn't think the story suffered from that at all. I loved it. I gave this 5 stars. Sorry if you feel a little off, I had to delete some things from my camera. My next category is logic-based magic systems. And what I specifically think I like about logic-based magic systems is that our main character is not necessarily the most powerful being that's walked the earth in the last 1,000 years, and they're just level 40 when everyone else is level 2. It's more about thinking outside of the magic system that we've been presented with, and I think that is really interesting, and I think that the author has to think of a lot of scenarios in order to not annoy the reader with a, well, why didn't you do this thing? And I think that it's a little bit more difficult of a magic system to write, and I really enjoy reading it. One that I can think of is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is a linguistics-based magic system where they write on a piece of silver 2 words in 2 different languages that kind of converge on meaning, and I was just absolutely stunned with this concept. I think that a lot of research had to be put in order to make this work, and I loved it. I thought it was so good. Also, Babel in and of itself is devastating. This was a 5-star read. This was one of my favorite fantasy books that I read last year. Blood Over Brighthaven by Emma Wong. This was my first Emma Wong. It definitely won't be my last. I really, really liked it. This is kind of like a physics-based magic system, and everything that our main character, like her inner thoughts when she was either critiquing other mages or thinking about how to solve something for herself, were really interesting. She also pissed me off for other reasons, but the magic system in this was excellent. And then my favorite book in this category, the book that I compare all other magic systems to, is Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. I love this magic system. They don't have like technology or electricity, but what they do have are these ruins that they can write into inanimate objects to convince them to do things. For example, if you have a carriage with wheels and you can inscribe on these wheels that, hey, actually, you're going downhill. In reality, they're on a flat ground, but you're actually going downhill so that they will move forward. And our main character has this innate ability, well, not innate, there's a plate in her head, but she has this ability to just put her hand on things and actually converse with them instead of just doing the ruin thing. And she's basically just arguing with inanimate objects and has to find these loopholes in order to kind of sidestep the rules that these animate objects are given. So like think locks. That's a big one that she kind of has to get around. I love this magic system. I think about it all the time. And the books themselves, the plot, the heist, the found family are also great. Next we have a sad queer teen uncomfortable in their own skin. And I feel like we've been getting a lot more of these, or maybe I'm just aware of them more or reading them more and enjoying them more. I don't know. But I have a few to recommend you. The first one that I thought of when I was imagining this category was Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. This is about a trans teen boy, Benji, who is in this religious cult. Well, his family is. He's just, kind of there. And they have decided that he is their savior. He is the chosen one. And he's going to go through this transformation in order to save them. There's also a pandemic happening. And there's these horrible monsters that are just kind of around, and he is going to become one in order to serve their religious purpose. But in this hunt, he escapes and finds refuge with this group of queer kids and kind of lets himself breathe and become himself a little bit despite going through this horrific transformation process. And the horror in this, despite it being YA, is absolutely there. The body horror is there. It's disgusting, horrific, and it really stressed me out. I thought this was so good, and now I cannot wait to read everything that Andrew Joseph White has ever written. He's actually coming out with his first adult book this year, and I cannot wait for it. And we have They Bloom at Night by Trang Than Tran. This just came out. This is about a teen living, I think, in like a Florida type of situation. There's a climate apocalypse, a climate crisis happening. And the teen is also going through this body transformation because they've gotten infected from the water that's around them. They are also in the process of making new friends and reconnecting with old ones and just being comfortable in their own skin. There's a lot of inner monologuing about how they're not comfortable being perceived as a girl, and how going through this monstrous process is better. How being perceived as this monster is better than being perceived as a girl. And I really liked this. I thought it was really good. It's coined as a coming of age story, and I love that and would definitely recommend it. And finally, we have Let the Forest In. This is a gothic, dark academia setting. I thought it was really lush and vibrant and very atmospheric. It is about two boys who go to this school. They're reconnecting after a summer, and the issue that they're having is that one of them is writing stories and one of them is drawing them, and they're about these monsters, but then these monsters are coming to life, coming into the school and killing people. Obviously an issue. Our main character is also dealing with his sexuality, like is he attracted to his friend, and also dealing with like I don't think I feel sexual attraction at all. Like the ace representation in this is really good, and I had not really read anything like it before I read it, and I'm obsessed with it. I can't wait to read more from C.G. Drews. I actually have the arc of their next book, Hazelthorn, on my Kindle. It feels like a very similar premise and setting, but I'm excited to experience it again. This next one is a really common trope and one that I am such a sucker for, and that's found family. One found family that I think is very unconventional and also as disorganized as a real family is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This story is about two boys in college that discover how to become superheroes by dying and coming back to life. But then we see them 10 years later, and one of them has just broken out of jail and kind of just formed this ragtag band to get back at the other one, and I love their dynamic. I think that it is so fun. Then we have the Bloodsworn Saga by John Gwynne. The first one is The Shadow of the Gods, and the Bloodsworn band is this like Viking brigade that is at war, I guess, and the gods are coming back to life, and that is a bad thing. They are not the good guys. But in it, we have 4 or 5 POVs, and 4 of them kind of interweave into each other's lives and form this found family, especially the one that is in the Bloodsworn, and I just love them all so much. I haven't read a lot of like dude bro fantasy like this, but this is definitely one that I will come back to. And then we have literally anything, actually, that Shannon Chakraborty writes. I love her fantasy. I love the relationships that she builds. But this one, the found family, had been established a lot of years ago, and they're all kind of like finding each other again in order to kind of complete a mission, get this reward money, and save someone's child. The humor in this was so good. Getting to reconnect with those relationships and kind of repair the tear that had happened so many years ago was really excellent, and I thought it was a unique take on found family because we are seeing them come back together again, not form those relationships, and I love that. Okay, next we have Unhinged Women. It's one of my favorite subgenres of horror, and I can't get enough of it. If you have any recommendations, please let me know. I want to give 2 honorable mentions before I talk about the 3 that I think are truly unhinged, because these get recommended a lot. They're very eyeball-based, and I think that the main characters are not good people, obviously are serial killing, but also are just like a little bit redeemable, or like their inner monologue is, there's some like conscious to it. And that's The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim, one of my favorite horrors of last year, and then also Mayfly by CJ Lead. Not my favorite CJ Lead, but I did like it. 3 that I want to talk about are Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth. This is about a woman whose mother-in-law dies, and she thinks that they're haunting them, and she's trying to fix it. She's trying to fix the haunting, getting the mother-in-law's ghost to go away. And this woman just like has no, it's not that she doesn't have remorse, it's that she doesn't even think that the things that she's doing are wrong. She feels like she's totally 100% in the right, and she's insane, and I love her. Then we have Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. This is about a woman who photographs men that she finds kind of like disgusting physically, and she's an awful person, a very unreliable narrator, and I loved this book and was horrified by it. I think that this is one of my favorite weird girl books, but it's not in any way redeemable. It's not even that fun. I really liked it though. And then we have what I think is going to be one of my favorite like horror or like weird girl books of the year, and that's Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fito. We follow Miss Naughty, and she is going to be a governess to these very rich children, and she has ulterior motives while she's there though, and she's also trying to keep her inner freak inside and not kill these kids. She is absolutely unhinged. The tone of this was very funny, but she's crazy and I loved it. I would absolutely recommend this. It's so short. It's so easy to get through, and I think that it is going to be a star this year. One thing about me is that I do not like a cozy fantasy. I don't really care for it. It's not something that keeps my attention or I really find any enjoyment in, but what I do like is a cozy sci-fi. I don't know why that distinction elevates my enjoyment so much, but I have a few recommendations. The first one is one that I liked, not loved, but I did just finish it, so I wanted to talk about it, and that's Space Rooms by A.G. Rodriguez. I believe it comes out later in March. This is about a space janitor. He cleans toilets. He is not happy with that, and he's not treated well by his boss. But then basically he finds this USB drive of information that is worth a lot of money, and he goes on this wacky adventure with these people who do a lot of different illegal activities to make make money. And it's about found family and also like going back to your home, and even if you didn't leave on the greatest terms, coming back is good and okay, and it's good to repair those familial relationships. I thought it was fine. I did give it an extra half star though for the forklift that behaves like a dog. I'm super into that. And then we just have Becky Chambers in general. She's such a queen of cozy sci-fi. She does have the Wayfarer series, of which I've only finished the first one, but I think they're more like interconnected standalones. We're not following the Wayfarers in the next book. But this was so cozy, so fun, and I loved getting to see the characters form their relationships. It was just a good time, a good cozy time. And then we have one of her novellas that I read last year that I felt really stuck with me, and that's To Be Taught If Fortunate. It is about a space crew that are getting these messages from Earth while they do this extended space mission. They were asleep while they traveled to where they were going, so the messages that they are getting are chronological for them, minus the time that they were sleeping. And they realize something is not quite right, so they fast forward and then realize that they're probably not going to get to go home, and how to deal with that and the grief of it all. I thought this was so well done. It was the exact length that it needed to be. I think that it was perfect for a novella. And then finally, the Monk and Robot series. I love these books. I think that they're so fun. I love seeing sibling Dex and our robot form their relationship. It's about a T-Monk who is not happy with their profession anymore, not finding any sense of fulfillment about it. So they go off into the wild where robots are because they're not really taking care of humans anymore. And I just think it's so cozy. It made me cry. I loved it. And finally, we have the Murderbot Diaries. This is the first one. All systems read. I think the first 4 books are novellas. And is there a lot of murder and fighting in this? Yeah, but it's still super cozy to me. I love this series. I've been putting off finishing it because I don't want it to end. It's about a security robot who hates its job, so it hacks its system in order to watch basically like soap operas, trash TV, but it keeps its job so that it doesn't get found out that it has hacked its system. And its general disdain for humanity that's not really there, and finding humanity within itself. It's so good. I love this series. It's so fun. And then we have apocalyptic horror that's commentary on today's political climate. I have 2 for this one. The first one is American Rapture by C.J. Lead. This is about a teen girl who is starting to experience the apocalypse. She's from a very religious household, and then the apocalypse that happens, people become feral with lust. This is devastating, and it has a trope that I usually stay away from, so I would definitely look up content warnings for this one, but the author's note at the end did make me kind of forgive that trope for existing, and devastated me even more. We also have Wake Up and Open Your Eyes by Clay McLeod Chapman. This is about how fax news is brainwashing people, turning them into these zombies, these caricatures of themselves. And we follow a nuclear suburban family, and the only person in this family that is not suffering from this is the kid that cannot have a screen. He's not allowed his own screen, so he has not been afflicted in this way, but the rest of his family is, and it's just like kind of devastating. And for this last category, I only have 2 that I have read, but I do have a 3rd book that I have a suspicion could be in this category, and that's funny fantasy. I'm a super big fan of grim, dark, being emotionally devastated from books, but every once in a while I want a palate cleanser, and sometimes I want that palate cleanser to be fantasy, so I enjoy the occasional funny fantasy. The first book is the author that wrote The Locked Tomb, also wrote this novella, Princess Florinda and the 40-Flight Tower. It's about a princess in a 40-flight tower. Shocker, I know. And she's waiting for her prince to come and save her, but none of them can get past the dragon on the 1st floor. And finally she's like, well, if no one is going to come save me, I guess I'll just fight my way down. And the levels get harder as you would go up, so she starts with the hardest one. She also befriends this fairy who is kind of like her frenemy. This fairy does not really seem to like her and is also disgusted by the concept of gender and a lot of other things that they're not afraid to share their opinion on, and it's just so silly. It's such a good time. And then we have another one that I finished recently, and that's How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler. This is about Davi. She is kind of in this video game Groundhog's Day scenario where she keeps dying and spawning at the same point, and what she is trying to do, what she has attempted to do thousands of times, is stop the Dark Lord from their rise to power and save kind of like this world that she's existing in. However, she's a human and people do not like humans in this world, and she's at the end of her rope now, so she is going to become the Dark Lord, and it's very fun. It's raunchy. It's a woman that's definitely written by a man. She's horny like all the time, but it's really fun. I liked it, and I am so stoked for the second book to come out. And then one that I think has such a high potential to be on this list is Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. I'm not super sure what this is about, but just like look at the covers. I think they're being published with new covers right now, which is actually devastating. I love Princess Donut. I don't know anything about the series except about Princess Donut, and I do think that I need to read it. I'm very excited to start this series, I hope this year. Those are all of the recommendations that I have for you. Let me know if you like this style of video, and I can definitely do more. If you made it this far, leave me a fairy emoji for Princess Florinda, and I will see you next time. Bye!